Jan Sutherland began her professional career as a special education teacher. Her expertise included many aspects of working with special needs youth, but her primary focus was in the area of multisensory education. Later, this expertise led Jan to a keen interest in animal-assisted education due to its strong reliance on nonverbal communication cues. In 1999, Jan founded the Light Center Foundation, a not-for-profit therapeutic program aimed primarily at meeting the unmet goals of challenged and at-risk youth. Serving as its executive director for 15 years, Jan and her Light Center team serviced over 1,400 individual kids who were falling through the cracks of traditional programming. Additionally, this program housed and maintained a variety of over 30 previously abused and neglected animals to assist as the primary teaching tools in a rural and natural farm setting. Most importantly, Jan discovered the ties that interconnect people and animals to the entire gamut of the natural world as we understand it. As humans, we are often judgmental in nature, but animals and nature hold no judgment, as ego does not exist beyond the human form. Herein was the essence and success of the Light Center program. Please welcome Dr. Janet Sutherland.
Good afternoon. Well, it's a privilege to be here today speaking on the topic of, I call it AAT, it's animal-assisted therapy, but I realize it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon and we're all kind of getting a little brain thick at this point in the day. So if you were here on Sunday afternoon, I mentioned that if you make it to Tuesday at 4, I'd have more little gifts for people. I was passing out things for our name tags earlier in the conference. So coming around the room are, two of my cohorts. And they're passing out something that looks like this. If you have one, the way to turn it on is to take it like this and squeeze it. There, and it stays on. And look at how it lights up the room. Isn't that kind of neat? Now, you're probably asking yourself, what do these little blinky rings and animal-assisted therapy have to do with metaphysics? Well, people, it's in the brilliance. Think about it. We are all creatures of light, and so are the animals that we worked at. And this is just your little reminder. So, as that may be, I have to put a little addition in here. Rusty Farrakhan, who I had never heard before, was singing the other night about Go Light the World, and all I could think of was, oh, there's the brilliance, we're going to be doing this. So, in any case, it all kind of started on a swing. I live out in the country, and my husband and I were sitting there. We've got a big old wooden swing. And it was really kind of neat because I was telling him about some research that I had heard in the 1970s. It must have impressed me because it's been sticking with me for a long time. And I'm going to read this so that I don't mess it up. The research attempted to answer the question, what single activity correlated highest in all the elements that make up traditionally defined successful families? And success was defined as literate, cooperative, respectful, educated, upwardly mobile, forwardly directed, and college-bound. So let me do the first part of that again. What single activity correlated highest in what made a successful family? Anybody want to take a stab at it? I have a prize. I not only have... Having a pet. What was it? Having a pet. A pet. No, but that's a good one. Anybody else? Love, that's good. No, but I hear that one a lot, and I kind of like that one. Anybody else? Look, prayer, that's an excellent one. Well, you know what? No prize, guys. I haven't heard camping. Of all things, who would think it would be camping? Except, to me, it made sense. It got kids outdoors, and it put you back in the natural environment. And I think that's extremely important. It was in my life. And so that was gelling on my mind. So we're sitting in this old swing, and I'm telling him, we have all this property. We have the time. I had just come out of special ed, and I was gone back into our family business, and it's a construction business. So I figured, well, we've certainly got the talent. We can build things. So we've got the time, the talent, and we've got the turf. Look at this. We're looking over 150 acres sitting here. We should do something. We should give back. And it came to mind. So I'm talking to him about that. And I thought, I know exactly the population I want to deal with. Coming out of special ed, I knew a lot of the kids lived in kind of a dark place. And as metaphysicians, we know that we are a source of brilliance. Brilliance is all around us. We just lose sight of that sometimes. And so many kids get into this dark state. And I don't know how humanity gets there, but I know it's part of our job to bring them out of that. You think about it, mental illness can be a very, very dark hole. Physical disability can leave people depressingly misunderstood. Learning disabilities, developmental disabilities can leave kids friendless and feeling out of control. Gang orientation can lead to violence and death. And juvenile detention, if you've ever worked with kids that have been incarcerated, man, some of those kids come out with horror stories that their lives never will be the same. So when you look at all that darkness, there's got to be a way to bring a little more brilliance. And I thought, people talk and talk and talk to these kids, but there's got to be a way to reach them beyond talking. Nonverbal communication. And I start thinking, the gel starts working up here about animals and how we could work with that. So we knew the population we had to work with, and then my husband agreed, that's a great idea. Let's start a foundation, and we did, and obviously there's lots more to that story. But that same week, I'm jumping forward now, I happened to be at a conference, not unlike this one, and Dr. Wayne Dyer was there, and he was speaking, and he's going on and on about the brilliance inside of us and the light that just should be emanating from us. And again, the light bulbs are going off. I grabbed my program, I grabbed a pen, and I wrote down the words Light Center. And I showed it to my girlfriend, Sandy, and she went like this, and we knew we hit it. That was it. There was no thinking about a name. We knew that was the name that was going to bring some hope to these kids and make our organization special. So in 1999, we developed our board of directors. We incorporated in 2000. And a quick, cool story is that in Memorial Day weekend of May of 2000, we built a barn for charity in one day. We put the word out into the universe, and 77 volunteers showed up. And I'm not talking Girl Scout troops. I'm talking about construction workers and bankers and lawyers. They all came out to build a barn in one day. Now, we did pour the foundation, and that was neat. We got the foundation done ahead of time. But we were before they could even saw the boards for the sidewalls, we were painting them. There's people with big rollers, and there's guys up on the roof, and they're nailing and hammering. And at the end of the day, we had a big pig roast, and it was fantastic. It was really, really neat. So now we've got the land, we've got the target population, we've got the building, and we had to ask ourselves, where are we going to get these animals from? We don't have a big pocketbook at this point. And to be honest, there's not a lot of money for the population that I'm talking about. There's a lot of kids in need, but unless they look like poster children, they don't get the funding that you would hope they would. So we thought, all right, we don't have any money to go out and buy any animals, so where can we get them for free? Let's get the ones that nobody else wants. So we hit the target phrase, our tagline, rescued animals, rescuing kids. And that's how we began to collect our animals. Now, I'm not talking about, dogs and your traditional, you might think of as service animals. I'm talking about farm animals. We had we had big horses, miniature horses, ponies. That's 3 different categories, by the way. We had donkeys, multiple ones. We had a deer named Bucky. We had a raccoon named Barney. We had sheep, goats. We had cows, both a steer and a cow. We had bunnies, ducks, Timex and Rolex. We had a rooster named Larry. We had chickens named Henrietta, Vivian, and Shirley. And what did we do with all these animals? Well, I got to tell you, first of all, back to the money part, we didn't have a lot of money, and I didn't realize how much money it would take to run all this. I just really believed the universe would provide. It was a great idea. Come on, it'll happen. And somehow, it really did. I can't tell you to this day exactly how that all came about, but it did. But we needed food. We needed money for food, for pastures. We needed turnout shelters. We needed fences, stalls, buckets, grain, hay, cages for the bunnies. We needed cleaning supplies, veterinary bills. We needed caretakers. We needed 24-hour monitors. And let me tell you, there's no vacations when you're taking care of 30 animals and you got busloads of kids coming in. Now, none of that quite gelled at that time. And let me tell you, the first Christmas we were into this, it was Christmas Eve, and I'm like in this nice little skirt, and I've got boots on, and we're having a blizzard. And we live out in west of Chicago, and we get some good weather out there. And I'm worrying about the animals, so I went out to do a night check, and the stall that was closest to the direction that the weather was coming in and the snow and that was where Norman the steer lived. And Norman's mooing away out there, and he's waking up the rest of the animals. So I get this big old push broom. Now you got to picture this. Like I said, I'm in a little skirt, and I got my little boots on, and I'm out there with this big old push broom, and I'm trying to get the snow off of the back of Norman. And I'm thinking, what the heck did I get myself into here? Another quick little aside, because everybody seems to love this one. We had a sheep named Babs. She was absolutely my favorite. And there's no way to put this other than that Babs had the runs. And we called the vet, and he said she needs kaopectate. So you're going to have to get it in her one way or another. So I called up one of my board members, and I said to her, come on, you got to come out and help me at the barn for a little bit. Now, she's somebody that thought she would sit on this board of directors and be taking notes and, helping to organize fundraisers and things. And I said, you better wear your barn clothes. So one of us is chasing around Babs, trying to get her, haltered up to the side, and the other one's trying to get the kaopectate in her. And we found out that Babs didn't like kaopectate. And as much as we'd get it in her mouth, she'd spit it back out. We looked like a snowstorm. We were covered head to toe with kaopectate. And I don't know how much Babs ever got in her, but it was pretty funny. That board member was ready to quit, I gotta tell you. Anyway, I want to give you kind of a visual to work with here. Picture a rolling countryside way west of Chicago, very rural. We have cows for neighbors. We have a little red barn. It was 300, it sits back 600 feet, but it was about a 300 by 100 foot barn that was made for us. Has a big red heart on the roof. Inside, when you go in the main door, there's a 40 by 40 classroom inside the barn. And then there's stalls down either side with double Dutch doors, as they're called. And all around are paintings. Now, the paintings on the wall are just things that the kids have done. We let them go crazy on the walls. And I only had one rule. If it was gang-related, obscene, or negative, it didn't go on. And the way I put it, simply, it'll be gone by tomorrow. You put that stuff up, it'll be gone. So no obscenity, no negativity, no gang-related symbols on the walls. These kids decorated this place like something it was out of a picture book. I didn't bring a presentation today, it just gets a little cumbersome, but you have to visualize this. Anyway, we've got all these animals behind all these. It was like, remember, Let's Make a Deal, what's behind door number 1 and what's behind, you never knew what was behind these doors. And we used Dutch doors so that even kids in wheelchairs could have access without having to look higher up. So we've got school buses arriving with kids 1 to 3 hours a day. Now, you say, what did we do with all these animals? Basically, we worked on skills. Whatever the kids needed, a lot of people think that if you're working with animals, you have to figure out what the animal does and then figure out how you can teach something meaningful to the kids. Being a teacher, I said, we're starting with the kids. What does this kid need? Now, how do we figure out how we can incorporate the animal into it? Because when you're working with nonverbal communication, the kids are tired of hearing people. I mean, it's blah, 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 blah. That's all they're hearing. They're not really listening. But when you work with the animals and it's nonverbal communication, they have to learn a new way to interact. And it's really pretty interesting. Some of the skills we worked on were critical thinking, character development, cognitive development, problem solving, self-esteem, integrity, anger control. It's a biggie, especially with the kids we worked with. Corrective thinking, we worked with the juvenile probation program, and that was exciting. The two biggest things that I found, though, were the nonverbal communication, teaching them how to interact and learning a new language that is really unknown to most of these kids, and to stop, think, and listen. Listen to what's happening. The animals will tell you so much if you take the time to listen, but you have to take a moment, and I talk fast, so this was hard for me, to stop and think. And just listen, let it be, and you'll start to interact. We delivered an alternative service model that bridged the gap between traditional, failed programming, and great success. And as Dick said, we serviced over 1,400 kids. Those were individual kids, not individual sessions. A little aside, my mentor was Dr. Sam Ross from Green Chimneys in Brewster, New York, if you've ever followed animal-assisted activities at all. And I said to him one time, and he was kind of a gruff old guy, he reminded me in so many ways of Dr. Masters. They were like so ahead of their time. But Sam Ross, Rollo as they called him, I was complaining to him. I know, I'm human, I was complaining, and he said, why are you worrying about the future? You can't control the future, and I'm thinking, yeah, I know all this. But he's saying, stop doing about it, and then he says, this is not your job. He said, your job, and now he's got my full attention. Your job is to be the torchbearer. Your job is to carry the light. And I'm thinking, oh my God, there is that light thing again. It just keeps popping into my world, these references to light. He said, you be the torchbearer, you build this program up. He says, and those that will come behind you, they're going to follow you and they're going to take it from there. And I've never forgotten that. It was such a prophetic statement. And that's what we did for 15 years. The only reason we stopped after 15 years is that my folks were getting close to transitioning and I needed to be the caretaker. Simple as that. Now, the neat part was that there was a sister program called Mainstay Therapeutic Riding that was maybe a half hour from where I lived. And we had big horses, but we also had a lot of little animals, more of a farm population. They had all big horses. They really wanted what I had, and I really kind of liked what they had, and they had a big new barn they were building. So I called them up, and their executive director and I put our heads together, and we said, it was kind of like this, how can we sell the board on this? We want to merge these two programs. And it worked out. I thought, I am not going to worry about this. I'm going to follow what Rollo told me. Don't worry about the future. It'll somehow work out. Because the program was right in my own backyard. And that was going to make it difficult for it to continue on without me in direct, everyday, service to it. So we connected the two programs, and it still survives today. And I was just at their not-for-profit, their annual fundraising event on Friday night, last Friday night before we all flew out here. So that was really, really exciting to me. A couple little asides. I have 5 minutes. That's perfect. Is there anybody here that doesn't know what a snow angel is? Y'all know what snow angels are? That's really good because unless you come from a snowy population or area of the country, you don't really often know. Well, I'm going to give you a couple little visuals. One visual is of a 6'2" juvenile offender, a little bit on the scary side, when you don't know kids and you don't know exactly what they're going to do. And he had no clue what a snow angel was. So one day out at the farm, we set the animals aside and took the kids out in the snow. And we were outdoors, rain or shine. The weather shouldn't stop you. We got out there and we told them what a snow angel was. Now, you got a picture, these great big kids. Their probation, they weren't their probation officers, but they were their basically probation caretakers, are sitting in the van smoking. And it's like, get over here, look at these kids. They're laying out there and they're making snow angels. And to me, it was like, my God, look at the brilliance in those kids. Look at it, it's just shining out of them. They don't know it's in there anymore. They forget. Another time we had a girl who was, she was a cutter, and she fell in love with one of our ducks who was badly abused and beaten by his own kind, I might add. Ducks can be really mean to each other. They just rip each other apart. It's a seniority thing. She fell in love with this duck and started carrying it around, and the duck's cuddling with her, and she signed a contract actually agreeing not to off herself, not to kill herself, as long as she could keep caring for that duck. And that girl is around to this day because she called me up about a year ago, and she's got her own children now. One more quick aside, I've got a picture of a 16-year-old girl, one tough puppy. Let me tell you, you didn't want to be alone in a room with her till you got to know her. And I have the most beautiful, it was one of our fundraising poster pictures, the most beautiful picture of this girl. I have to step away from the podium. She's holding a baby chick like this, looking down at this baby chick. And the love that is, you can absolutely see it. The hair goes up on my arms every time I think of it. You could see the light just pouring out of her into this little animal that she was holding. And I'm thinking, what happened to this poor girl that's somehow been lost? So that's what we did for all these years. And in closing, I just want to remind you that brilliance comes in many, many packages, and it shines in each of us, no matter how troubled we are or how troubled those around us are. And it also shines in our brothers and sisters in the animal kingdom, and we should never lose sight of that because we are all together in this world. Thank you.